Tropical storm Melissa in the central Caribbean continues to fight off wind shear and is expected to strengthen rapidly this weekend into a powerful hurricane. Those in Hispaniola, Jamaica, and southeastern Cuba are at risk of tremendous amounts of rainfall, and some could be dealing with tremendous amounts of wind and storm surge as well. Thank you for joining me here this afternoon on this Thursday. We're going to get right to it and talk about what's going on with Melissa and impacts that will be felt, what we expect to happen, and what could still change with the forecast. And here's a look at the satellite image showing Melissa still somewhat disjointed here as wind shear from the west has continued to produce most of the shower and thunderstorm activity to the east of the storm center. But unfortunately, because the storm is really not moving much, that heavy rain continues to slam into portions of southeastern Haiti and southern portions of the Dominican Republic, where some spots may likely have already picked up a foot or more of rainfall. Now, the storm is going to begin to inch northward tomorrow as a trough over the Bahamas begins to lift out to the north and east. And at that point, we should see the wind shear begin to diminish and a strengthening trend likely will take over. Let me get that off the screen for you here. You can see right now that we do have the current advisory position as of 2 p.m. at 15.5 degrees north and 75.3 degrees west. The storm is walking north-northwest at 2 miles per hour. The strongest winds have come down just a little bit, down to 45 miles per hour. And that is not a surprise at this point. The storm still lacks some organization, and the pressure is 1,001 millibars. Now, changes this afternoon. We do have hurricane watches extended now to the island of Jamaica and tropical storm warnings there as well. We still have the hurricane watch for the southwestern portion of Haiti and a tropical storm warning now for Haiti. Now, the storm track has adjusted a little bit more. The storm is expected to get closer to Jamaica, and there's a very high chance that this storm still could make landfall on Jamaica at some point, maybe as soon as Sunday morning, but sometime between Sunday and Tuesday. And the reason for the discrepancy in the time is the fact that the storm is going to be moving very slowly as it inches northward and then begins to move back to the west. So a lot of uncertainty on how exactly this is going to play out. But unfortunately, the risk of a hurricane, and in fact, a major hurricane, is still awfully high for the island of Jamaica and down the road for portions of Cuba as well. Those in Haiti still need to be tracking this very closely, as the storm could still meander off to the right side of this track somewhat and bring hurricane conditions at least onto portions of the Tiburon Peninsula here, at least the southwestern tip of Haiti as well. And certainly a lot of rain is coming with Melissa. Some of the key points to keep in mind here as the storm continues to very slowly drift north, it is going to continue to grow in size. And the rain is not going to just disappear magically as the storm makes the bend back to the west. These areas of the greater Antilles will be dealing with rain well into next week. Prolonged multi-day rainfall will likely produce life-threatening flash flooding. We're going to see numerous landslides and also coastal flooding. And as the storm is expected to strengthen, we will see wind damage on top of that. Think of storms like Hurricane Helene, which brought strong winds on top of flooding rain across mountainous areas. Unfortunately, that's what we could be dealing with over portions of Haiti, maybe the southern Dominican Republic, certainly Jamaica, and eventually portions of Cuba as well. We are also going to see this rain falling over several days. It's not just going to be a quick moving system. We're talking about 4, 5, 6, maybe even more days of rainfall. And the rainfall potential over the next 3 days is awfully high, over a foot of rain potentially over eastern Jamaica and southwestern portions of Haiti on top of what's already fallen. And you can see the area that's hatched here has the greatest amount of uncertainty because our track is still not set in stone and the storm can still strengthen. And so some of these amounts just offshore of up to 30 inches, up to 750 millimeters, that certainly could expand northward into these populated areas. So unfortunately, this has got a natural disaster tag on it. Is likely to get worse and worse over the coming days. Now, the latest forecast track from the Hurricane Center has shifted north a little bit, and there will still be adjustments in the forecast. The official forecast is for it to become a Category 4 hurricane. My forecast is stronger. I do believe it's got a chance of becoming Category 5. Because I am moving it a little bit closer to Jamaica sooner, I don't think it'll be quite as strong as what we saw yesterday, but nonetheless, I would not get too caught up in the category numbers at this point. It's the impacts we really need to be worrying about. And a storm that spends 3 or 4 days over an island as a hurricane, or at least within 100 miles of an island, is going to be catastrophic either way you look at it. So let's not get too caught up on the category numbers, but just know that hot water and slow moving storms this time of the year with lowering wind shear is never a good solution. And unfortunately, you can see here that the area where the storm is going to be traversing over the next couple of days has some extremely high ocean heat content. The hottest waters of the entire basin are to the west of Jamaica. There's still a chance that this storm could hook around the island and come back into these waters. That's not something we should rule out completely, but it's looking a little bit more likely at this time that the storm is going to go over just to the south or maybe even potentially just to the east of Jamaica by the time we get into this weekend. And either way, it's still going to be a powerful storm because of that. And if you take a look at the water vapor, you can see despite the wind shear and some of the dry air off to the north and west of the system, it is still resilient and still has the look of a storm that will get slingshot into what will be a major hurricane. It's not there yet. It's not even close. It's still gathering steam, but it's getting ready to explode, I think, by the time we get into Saturday and early in the day on Sunday. So you can see, yes, there's still some west-northwesterly wind shear, a little bit of dry air, but despite all of that, every storm that has dealt with the wind shear this season that has not really had a chance to flourish, this one has managed to outperform all of those situations and all those storms. So it is likely going to major hurricane status and perhaps very quickly. Taking a look at our latest visible satellite image, apologize for the slowness here. You can see it's still some exposure of some dry air getting in on the western side of the circulation. You can see the circulation center is about here, lined up with the far western tip of Haiti at this point. It's not super far from Jamaica, but fortunately, the heavy rain has so far avoided Jamaica. We've just had some scattered showers coming in off of the trade winds, and that should stay the case into the first part of tomorrow before we start to see conditions beginning to head downhill later in the day tomorrow, and especially as we get into the day on Saturday. Unfortunately, the heaviest rains continue to impact the same locations. You see the feeder bands, and you see these brighter clouds continuing to feed moisture in from the Caribbean Sea right onto the island of Hispaniola. And unfortunately, there's a lot of high mountains in here that are getting extremely high amounts of rain falling. And I can't imagine how bad it is now. It's only going to get worse in the coming days. But the structure at this point is not super healthy just yet. The pressure has held pretty steady in the low to mid 1000s of the millibars. You can see the wind field is still somewhat jagged with lighter wind flow here on the western side due to what the aircraft have measured. And winds have only gotten to about 40 to 45 miles per hour at flight level on the eastern side of the storm. So really at this point, just a moderate tropical storm, not yet to the point where it is showing a strengthening phase. Right now, we're just tracking the little jogs and the nubs and the wobbles to the right and the wobbles to the left, because the models do react to those pretty much every 6 hours when that new data comes in. And every little data point here does matter and does potentially change the outcome of the ultimate spot where this is going to make landfall. I do want to show you the steering currents and why these are important. Now, this is the steering current in the upper part of the atmosphere, and this is where a stronger hurricane would get steered. You see where the trough is located over the Bahamas. There's a ridge of high pressure that continues to drift east through Mexico, and there's a ridge of high pressure near the Windward Islands and a trough in between the two. Now, if the storm were very strong, it would feel this trough and get pulled through Hispaniola, and the GFS model continues to insist that's going to happen. But the storm is not strong, so that's not happening. It's getting stuck, and it's not feeling the effect of that trough. Over time, as the storm does get stronger, this ridge builds east. It is going to allow the system to come underneath the ridge and allow it to go more westerly. You see that on the southern side, there's going to be some east to west directional flow. And as this ridge builds east behind this trough, which leaves, that leaves us with more of a steering flow. But it's not just going to happen like that. It is going to take some time for that situation to actually unfold. The situation we're in right now is the opposing wind that we're seeing in the lower levels of the atmosphere that you would see during a weaker storm. And we have light easterly flow. So aloft, we have westerly or southwesterly flow. And near the ground, we have southeasterly or easterly flow. The two are opposing each other. And that's why you've got a storm that doesn't quite know where to make up its mind and go just yet. And that is the complexity we're dealing with at this time. Now, longer term, as I mentioned, we're going to see a change that will allow the storm to track in a more northerly direction, but a lot of details between now and then. If you take a look here at this European AI forecast, you're going to see some of the main drivers on the map as to what's going to steer this system along. So we've got a trough pulling out. We've got high pressure building in over the Gulf. That's this area here. And then we've got a trough of low pressure, which is going to protect most of the Gulf from having any kind of tropical activity because the storm is going to be down in here to the south and east of Jamaica and south and west of Haiti. And this is as we get into the beginning of the weekend. Now, over time, what you're going to see is this area of high pressure does slide over to the right, and this trough pushes east on it, and that allows the storm to go underneath the ridge and shift to the west. But because that trough is continuing to progress eastward, it is going to pick the storm up, and another trough following it is going to be stronger and will lift it out to the north. Because we've got a big area of high pressure over the northern and eastern portion of Canada, and because we've got a trough digging down here, there's absolutely no way the system is going to be able to go west across the Gulf. The only way that that could even possibly happen is if this upper low were to somehow get stuck in the southwest and we had high pressure lifting back over the southeastern United States. And that just doesn't really happen this time of the year. That's a lot more common earlier on in the fall season, maybe in September, just not in late October. Typically, this time of the year, cold air comes down and comes in and progresses and moves along. So what will happen with this is we're going to see a lot of rain down south this weekend. We'll have a little severe weather, and then we're going to see a big storm moving up the East Coast in advance of Melissa. Now, as we move this along here into late next week, what is interesting is that there could be some interaction between Melissa and this trough. And yesterday, the Canadian model showed something kind of rare in that this trough was actually going to pick up our system and try to pinwheel it back into New England. Now, today it's not showing that. Fortunately, the trough is not quite strong enough to do that. This ridge is moving along. So it's a highly unlikely scenario that that happens. But it's something we still need to keep an eye on at this point. Regardless, this storm is not going to get stuck in the Caribbean for too long. It's going to be slow moving for the next 6 or 7 days, but this trough should lift it up and should slingshot it up to the north and east as we get to the second half of next week. And I don't think we'll have any direct impact on certainly the southeastern U.S., but maybe something to watch for the northeastern coast and Atlantic Canada late next week and into next weekend. So more on that in the coming videos. Let's take a look, though, at what's going on in the Caribbean and what the impacts are going to be. So we have seen a bit of a shift back to the right. That's this black line in today's models. Just a slim shift, but one that is substantial for Jamaica in that guidance has adjusted back to the northeast, meaning a greater threat to Jamaica as far as a direct landfall could happen. And we take a look at the model runs that were available around lunchtime today on the East Coast. And aside from the outlier that the GFS continues to adjust this and pull it away to the northeast, which I don't think happens, a strong majority of the models bring the system near or over Jamaica. And that would happen over the weekend and early next week. And that is obviously very bad. So if you're in Jamaica, you got to take this pretty seriously. I don't think we can continue to wait to see if this will change or not. I think now is the time to act. We do have the Canadian model, which does show this system somehow escaping off to the west, going over extremely hot water and then making a sharper recurve over the Cayman Islands. But that's also an outlier. The majority of our model guidance does bring this all within about 50 to 100 miles of the island of Jamaica. Here's another view. These are the 18Z models. All of our hurricane models are going very close to Jamaica. We have one or two that are on the eastern side of the island, several that are over or to the south and west of the island. But overall, everything is within 100 miles of Jamaica, and then also over the eastern side of Cuba, and then eventually the Bahamas, and then maybe something to watch in Bermuda down the road here towards the middle of next week. The Google DeepMind continues to insinuate this is going to become a very powerful storm, category 4 or 5, as it moves close to Jamaica. It still has the mean of all of the ensembles going right over the western side, right near Negril, and then continuing up into the western portion of southern Cuba, and then racing off through the central Bahamas, and then tracking somewhere up through the western Atlantic. with about a third of our models missing Bermuda to the south and east, about 50% going well east of the eastern seaboard, but close enough to Bermuda to be a threat. And then we do have a few outliers which try to interact with that trough, and something to watch on the east coast of the U.S. or Canada. And again, it's still early at this point to try to make any call on that. But the chance of a direct hit on the U.S. this far up the coast is about 5%. The chance for Canada, though, is higher. I would say it's about 15 to 20% if you trust this model. The scary part about the Google DeepMind is that it's not backing off on the intensity forecast. If you take a look at the intensity distribution and you look at all the possibilities here for Sunday, you look at how ragged the storm is now, and then you take a look at overnight Saturday night. I mean, we're talking just over 2 days from today, about 60 hours from now, and only 2 of 50 are showing a tropical storm. 11 are showing a category 1 hurricane, 8 a category 2, and more than half are showing a category 3 or higher, 13 a category 4, and 1 a category 5. The number of category 5 possible solutions climbs all the way up to 9. So we've got more than half of these showing a category 3 or greater. And it's my experience that when a storm is going to rapidly intensify, it is probably going to follow on the high end of this, assuming no structural changes like a eye wall replacement cycle or something like that, and assuming no landfall. So a very high chance that this is going to be at least a category 4. And I am going to continue to stick my neck out and say that at some point here, it's going to reach category 5. Is it going to be as strong as some of the models that I showed you yesterday? I think that could be a little bit far-fetched, but if we look at our reliable regional hurricane models, they are still onto this. They are showing a weak system tonight, and then a storm that begins to organize and get a core together tomorrow night as a tropical storm. And then as we get late tomorrow night into the early part of Saturday, as the storm is getting close to southwestern Haiti, it is in fact strengthening at a steady rate into a hurricane by daybreak on Saturday. And then it begins to make the turn. And for whatever reason, despite how close it's getting to Haiti, as the storm makes the west turn, it is going through an incredible phase of intensification. It's not just the halves A showing it. I have other models showing that as well, but I'll show you the halves A. And we go from a 985 millibar strong tropical storm to 24 hours later, we have a category 5, 922 millibar hurricane. And actually, it deepens a little bit more down to 918 millibar. So, yeah, not an 880 storm like yesterday. That's going to be awfully hard to do in such a small space. But nonetheless, a storm that is just incredibly intensifying here, and a worst case scenario, I would say, for Jamaica, because this storm, even if it doesn't hit Jamaica dead on from the east, it's going to be close enough to cause major impact. And you can see here, this will probably change, but the storm eye wall is hitting Kingston, and then it's just kind of circling around for almost a day and then finally moving northeastward. And at that point, it will be weaker, I would expect, because of that interaction with Jamaica and the mountains that are on the island. But that's one of the halves models. Here's the other one. It's a little bit different, but it does show a similar scenario in that later on tomorrow evening, it does start strengthening. And late tomorrow night, we have a hurricane, category 1 at that point by Saturday morning. And then we have a category 2 before lunchtime, and then a category 3 after lunch, and then a category 4 in the evening, and then a category 5 late at night. And we've got just an incredibly strong storm that's actually hitting Jamaica here on the southeastern tip, and then hovering very close to the southeastern and southern shore of Jamaica and just riding the entire coast, and then eventually moving northward. So both of these are showing just a disastrous scenario for the island of Jamaica, especially the eastern part, but they could change quite a bit still. The year doesn't show as grim a scenario for the eastern side of Jamaica, but it still shows a powerful storm that we need to be watching closely. And I do want to show you that the does not have the rapid intensification happening nearly as quickly. In fact, as we look at Saturday morning, we've got still just a tropical storm. It also doesn't bring the storm nearly as close to Haiti. But as the storm is traversing the waters south of Jamaica, it is gathering strength. And by Sunday morning, it's certainly a hurricane. And then by Sunday evening, it's a major hurricane. And then by Monday, it is a strong hurricane, a category 4, I would say. And then still strengthening over the hottest part of the Caribbean. And then, unfortunately, the European decides, instead of riding the south coast of Jamaica, it's actually going to make a right turn and hit the western side of Jamaica dead on, basically perpendicular to the coast as a category 5. and then continuing across the island and then doing the same thing to southern Cuba. So a lot of different scenarios still that could possibly play out, but all of them point to a disastrous scenario for at least Jamaica, not to mention the heavy rain that's going to fall elsewhere across Hispaniola, Cuba, and maybe the Cayman Islands as well. Here's a look at that wind potential for Jamaica, and you can see unlike the other tropical models, instead of hammering the eastern side of the island, it actually looks like the strongest winds would be on the southern side of the island, which would be very unfortunate because we just had Hurricane Beryl going back about 15 months ago. But you can see the strong winds then come up the western side, and we've got potential wind gusts of 130 to 140 knots. That's about 160 miles per hour. And then those winds continue on into southern Cuba at about 150 miles per hour. And then right across the southeastern Bahamas, winds will still be very strong, category 3 to category 4 intensity. And the mountains of Hispaniola could also have intense winds of tropical storm strength at the very least. So the track is going to be extremely important on who gets the worst of it. Looking at the Bahamas, you can see we still could see some very strong winds over a large area. The storm will grow in size due to the light amount of wind shear that's expected. The fact that the jet stream will actually give it the ability to ventilate and grow more on the northern side. We're going to be talking a growing system. And on this model run, the Bermuda, we need to be watching very carefully as well, because as we get to about a week from today, we are looking as well at potentially a hurricane in your backyard. And according to this run of the European, we're looking at wind gusts in Bermuda of 130 to 140 miles per hour. Now, it's such a small target. I do expect that that forecast run will change. But again, it is at least a possibility at this point. Rainfall amounts, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on this, but 1,000 millimeters of rain potentially. That's about 40 inches in the areas in the brightest pink, just offshore. But even on the south coast, we're talking 20 to 30 inches of rain for the south coast of Hispaniola. Jamaica, no matter where this goes, you are likely getting probably 2, 3, or 4 feet of rain. We're talking anywhere from 400 to maybe 1,200 millimeters. I know the model says 1,000, but there's error in that. Southern Cuba could see significant rain. We're probably talking between 10 and 30 inches of rain as well. The mountainous areas, this model is not going to pick up on those little mesoscale, microscale type climates, but we could see amounts that get over 50 inches somewhere in there, and that's going to cause absolute devastation. This could still shift left or right, but right now this is what the models have shown, and they continue to show. So there's a lot to talk about here still. We will track it for you on a daily basis, updates to come. If you want to get the latest information from me, I urge you to become a subscriber if you haven't yet. That will give you the ability to continue to interact, see videos as they come out here on a daily basis. I'll have community posts, and I do have a Facebook page as well where I'm going to share that information with you as quickly as I can get it. So I appreciate you joining me here today. I hope everybody has a plan in place in the Caribbean. I am praying for everybody's safety. And speaking of prayer, I am a Christian, and I do give all the honor and glory to God no matter what happens with the weather, because we just can't. We can't control the weather, but we can certainly control where we spend our eternity by repenting and turning to God. In Matthew 3:2, John the Baptist preaches, "Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." And some translations say the kingdom of heaven is near. John is telling us to turn to God and to just give it all to him, and to stop following the ways of the world, and to follow God, and to trust in him, and to trust in our Savior, Jesus Christ. And when we do that, we are given the gift of salvation by following God, and by repenting, and by giving up the control that we feel that we have over everything, and giving God all the control and giving him all the glory, because he created us, and he's the only one that can forgive us of our sins. We can't be forgiven amongst ourselves. Once the sin is done, it's done. But the great news is that there is an eternal future waiting for you. And despite the freaky weather that we deal with, despite all of the divide, all of the evil that goes on in this world, there is a heaven waiting for you if you choose to accept Jesus as your Savior. I hope you've made that choice. I really do. If you haven't, I'm not going to give you a hard time about it. I certainly won't. You are still welcome here no matter what you choose to believe. You may be struggling in your faith. You may not have faith. And that's okay, because I was there for a long time in my life. I'm not I'm not I was not born in the church. It took me a long time before I came to accept Jesus, but I do know that we serve a wonderful God and that He can change lives and He will change where you serve your when you're where you spend eternity. So I appreciate you joining me here on this Thursday. I hope you all have a blessed evening, and I will be back here at the same time tomorrow. God bless.